Welcome to part two of the tilting technique. If you watched part one, you saw me doing very simple fades, one color, a little brass, using this technique. In this one, we're going to go a little more crazy. I'm just going to, before I start talking on and on about everything like a crazy woman, I'm gonna talk you through the first fade that I'm doing here. Putting down some ink, a drop of brass on top of that, and now adding the alcohol, and I'm putting the alcohol only about halfway around the ink, and that is key when you want to make fades. You don't want your ink to move all the way around the alcohol. And you can see me adding a little extra alcohol to make sure that I have enough on the outside so that I can create this fade. And what I'm doing is basically just very gently picking up the paper and start tilting the ink around. I usually sort of swirl it from one side into the middle and then over to the other side. Now you can really tilt it sort of back and forth as, yes, I messed up my paper. That was quick. You can tilt this back and forth as many times as you like, really. Until it looks like what you want it to look like. This is my favorite technique. Well, I got a couple of favorites, but this is definitely one of them. Now, when the fade sort of has the shape that I want it to, and it looks the way I want it to, I get my hairdryer and I use it mostly to just dry the ink. I don't want it to move too much and change the shape. When I only have a little bit of wet ink and alcohol in the center, I start moving the hairdryer around a little bit to sort of get a little texture. I don't want these fades to be too pretty. I want some stuff going on inside the fade. But this is basically wiping off a little ink. I got too much brass on that. This is basically what I use the tilting technique for. It is to make fades. You can see me doing a lot of hand gestures here. It's basically because I'm doing a voiceover right now, but I was talking a lot while I was filming this, but I ended up spending like almost an hour on this, and that was just way too long. So I'm doing a voiceover instead, but you will see a lot of hand gestures because I'm talking and talking and talking while I was filming this. The tilting technique you can use for pretty much anything you want to create with your ink. It doesn't have to be fades. This is just sort of, I love doing fades, and using this technique is so much fun. But you can sort of create anything you want with this. When I first started doing this, it was tricky. Very, very tricky, because every time I picked up the paper, the ink and alcohol just ran away from me. So it took a little while to sort of get the hang of it, and also to figure out how much alcohol actually to put on the paper so that I could still control it. But once I got the hang of this, I was completely addicted to this technique. And also, because I was still new to ink when I started trying this, when I sort of realized how to do this so I could still control the ink, it was sort of a game changer for me, because I was struggling with the hairdryer. It took me a long time to get the hang of the hairdryer. This actually was easier for me to do. And so I used this technique a lot at first while I was still practicing with the hairdryer. And to this day, I still love doing this. And there's just something magical about watching that ink and, you know, the brass just move around. I absolutely love it. Now, like I said, in part one, it was a quite simple little piece that I did, just doing sort of very similar fades with this technique. And I want to do a little something extra. So I'm going to be using 3 different colors for this. And of course a lot of brass. And I'm going to be using this technique all the way through this piece. And what I want to do with these fades, a little different from the piece in part 1. I want to sort of build these fades on top of each other. I want to make layers because, first of all, well, it just looks cool with more than one color. But also, when you start making these fades on top of each other, you mix in your color a little bit, which creates new colors. And you get so much depth and, well, I don't know, texture is not the right word, but so much stuff starts happening once you build these fades on top of each other. You can see it already with the 2 sort of reddish ones that I've done. You start getting these dark lines. The brass starts sort of moving around, breaking off into little pieces. It's amazing to watch. Now, if you are completely new to this technique, maybe you're like me and you find it really, really tricky at first, but I just, please just give it a go. Try a few times and see if you sort of get the hang of it, because it's completely addictive. And once you know how much alcohol to put on and how to tilt it around, you realize that you can actually have a lot of control with your ink and this technique. Now, you can never really control alcohol ink 100%. I think anyone who's tried ink knows that. I always say on a good day, you can control about maybe 70% tops of what happens, and the ink decides the rest. And that's okay, because that's what makes it fascinating. But I do think that practice a little with this technique and you realize how much you can control the ink. Now you see me wiping a little bit of the alcohol and ink off right here. I had sort of too much color in this, and there was too much alcohol in towards the center, and I couldn't really sort of move it the way I wanted to. And if I started drying it, it would take too long and it would move too much with so much alcohol on. So you can always wipe a little bit off if you get too much. Often with ink, you don't need as much ink as you think you do. So always wipe a little bit off if you feel like you will move it too much with the hairdryer. Just talking quickly about the composition for this. Besides sort of working my way across the paper and trying to create some different directions to get some flow in this piece, I'm also trying to make these fades in different sizes. I want some to be bigger, I want some to be smaller, and this is also something that with a little practice you will know how much alcohol you sort of need. The more you practice this, the more you start swirling it around, you'll know how much you need depending on how big you want these fades to be. And another little tip for you, which you can also see a bit right here, when you sort of know where you want your finished fade to be, where you want it to end up, with the dark color in towards the center, always put down your ink a bit further out than where you want it to end up, because once you add the alcohol and start swirling it around, you need a little space to move it, and it will always end up further in towards the center of the paper than where you initially start out. So always put down your ink a bit further away than where you want it to end up. Also, when you start drying it, you might also move it a tiny little bit in towards the center. So that's just a little extra tip for you. I really, really hope if you are completely new to alcohol ink, or just if you haven't tried this technique before, I really, really hope that that I might have inspired some of you to try this, because it really, really is such a fun technique. I'm very passionate about this. I absolutely love it. So you can do so much stuff with this. I think a lot of people don't really, well, maybe you haven't seen someone do this before. You just sort of forget that this is fun, because everyone always uses the hairdryer, the airbrush, the little air blower, all fun tools. But this is such a different approach to doing alcohol ink, and I love it. I hope some of you newbies will try this out. So many possibilities with this, and also it's just a challenge to learn a new technique like this, and it's good to have challenges sometimes. Keeps us on our toes, I think. Just a little side note. I've had a fun conversation a couple of times with someone on Facebook who told me that she woke up in the morning and did alcohol ink in her pajamas after watching one of my videos, and I feel like I need to try that. I have never done alcohol ink in my pajamas, so thank you so much for inspiring me. I will do that one day. I will do a video of me doing ink in my pajamas. I was also advised to sort of think about what type of pajamas I'm wearing to make sure it's suitable for YouTube, so I don't accidentally scare any of you. I don't have a lot of pajamas, but I'll try and see if I can find one that is suitable for YouTube. So maybe someday soon, inking in my pajamas. So this video is coming to an end. Spent about almost an hour, I think, on this piece, and that is something that I think is also very important with this technique. You need to be patient. No need to rush it. Take your time. If you rush it, you can't control it. So be patient with this technique. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope some of you may feel inspired to try this out. One of my absolute favorites, and fun sometimes to get a break from all the other tools that we're using. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions or any suggestions for stuff that you would like to see me do in videos. That's it for this time, and I will hopefully be back again soon.